Hello gamers and welcome to Game Warp. I'm Elwood.
I'm Kim.
And this is our review of Life is Strange Before the Storm. Life is Strange Before the Storm is a prequel to the original game Life is Strange, released in 2017. Unlike the previous game, this sees you taking control of Chloe Price's time, as the story is set 3 years before the original game and eliminates many of the elements that made the original game so unique, such as time travel. Now, playing through Chloe, you follow the story of her relationship with Rachel, who was the girl that she was looking for in the original game. Once again, we are back in Arcadia Bay, which is in Oregon, as this story once again taps into that Twin Peaks vibe. This is the small seaside town vibe where dark secrets run deep, and over the course of the 3 episodes, you follow the course of Chloe and Rachel's relationship, as well as finding out some of the secrets which Rachel's father has been hiding from her, as well as dealing with the fallout from the pair's actions. So it's over the course of the story. Now, Kim, we were both, so I'm thinking it's safe to say we were both fans of the original game, and we were kind of excited, obviously, for Before the Storm to come out. I mean, we've actually given it a little bit more time for more people to get out there and play it, because obviously it's a bit impossible to talk about this game without spoiling elements to it. And if you're a fan of the original game, I think there's going to be things that you like about this. At the same time, if you're new to the series, you can just sort of pick up this and play it as its own game. But as a established fan, I mean, what did you make of this prequel?
Well, I think I might not be as big of a fan as you are of it. I definitely have my problems with the original game, but I think that, like, Arcadia Bay is very memorable, and they do have some really memorable moments, and it does tell a really great story, especially, like, the whole mystery and the darkness and the suspense of it all. So it works on many levels, and Life is Strange Before the Storm, I've never been, I guess it's good to establish that I've never been a fan of people doing prequels. I feel the same way about, say, Star Wars doing prequels for their movies, as controversial as that sounds. Where it feels like it's really like milking a franchise, because now you're just playing on people's feelings, you know? Are you really telling, the key here is whether they're telling a story that you want to know of these characters, right? And everybody's going to have, like, a different feeling as to how they thought Chloe and Rachel should have started and how they actually feel about this friendship or this relationship, whatever you want to call it. So, I don't know. I mean, I thought the story was good. I thought the pacing was not so great, but then the original game also had some pacing issues, but it was just spread over, like, 5 episodes of maybe 1.5, 2-hour doses, whereas this one is, like, in 3 episodes over 2.5 to 3 hours per episode, which is a much longer dosage every time you go through a story.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and certainly when this was first announced, we found out it was only going to be 3 episodes compared to the previous game's 6. There was this sort of nagging feeling that whether it's not going to be as a fulfilling experience, but as you said, I mean, these episodes are stupidly long. They're like 3 hours apiece, so you're looking at about 12 hours of gameplay in total. And this isn't without even going in and looking at every tiny little scrap of paper that's scattered throughout the levels. I mean, I certainly enjoyed the original game. I thought it was a real nice mix of, like, nerdy culture and interesting storytelling, with the time travel elements proving an interesting mechanic. Now with obviously the prequel, where we've got this story of Chloe and Rachel's relationship, which was such this big part of Life is Strange, it's kind of nice to actually see that story unfold. The obvious downside is the fact that they've obviously decided that they're going to have that story alone isn't enough, so we end up having all this family drama sort of tacked on, which provides some of the most annoying aspects of the game as you're having to play the bratty child and trying to rebel against your parents, which it's okay like the first round you go it, but when you're like faced with 2 chapters of this game, of the 3, where you basically spend the first opening hour or so arguing with Chloe's stepfather, and it doesn't feel like you're getting anything different out of this experience, and it just became very grating. And it often was the case that, especially in the case of the first 2 chapters, that nothing really happened until the second half of the story, and those were often the scenes where with Rachel, and it's sort of just like the Chloe and Rachel interaction that the game actually sort of felt interesting. And I think it was really essentially saved by the 3rd chapter, which finally actually gave us some action. It gave us something to sort of grasp hold of and be interested in, rather than just sort of soap opera style drama, which was sort of carrying the first 2 chapters across.
Well, I think that, soap opera might be a bit of an extremity here. I think like even in Life is Strange, Chloe has always been known as these even Chloe and Max back in the original game, we've known them to be these like angsty teenagers, So you kind of expect them to have that sort of same element when you're walking into this game, and I guess because of that, it didn't bother me so much. But it kind of sucks because how things are going to turn out. It's why I don't like prequels, is because the fate of the characters, we already know. We already know what's going to happen to Rachel. We already know what's going to happen to Chloe. The idea now is just, how did it all go down? How did Chloe get kicked out of Blackwell? How did the course of how did her stepfather and her mom eventually get married despite all the disagreements they had at home, and then so it's why Rachel is so interesting, because Rachel was always that mysterious element in the first game, in like the original game, that we never knew who she actually was. So you kind of see her here, and then, I guess you can draw your own conclusions. To me, I found that Rachel is kind of a pretty colorful character in her own way. Maybe sometimes even more colorful than Chloe is, because she can, maybe it's just because it feels like there's something deeper about her. And I always wonder, I don't know, I've always thought Rachel was a very manipulative person, even in the original game. And I'm not sure if I feel like she's convinced me that she really is, because there are moments I feel like she is pretty manipulative to Chloe in this game also. But then, I mean, they really like each other a lot. So they're kind of like influencing each other in their actions to whether it's good or bad decisions,
I can't help but obviously feel as well the fact that we obviously feel that they've got this intense connection. I mean, the game itself gives you so many moments where you don't have to go through the more obvious romantic routes for these characters, but I think for some reason we feel compelled that we have to follow the actions which will force these 2 characters together. I mean, there's certainly...
Just to cut you there, I actually never gave in to any of those things. I never gave in to any of the kiss scenes. I never gave in to any of that sort of thing. I just wanted their friendship. Like, I wanted their friendship to be there, but then, eventually there was a natural course of them just, as, like, you can see that it's a relationship that's, like, pretty deep in that sense, where they really understand each other. And I think that that's why they did that, where they did, like, the whole, Chloe's family problems, and then Rachel has her family problems, and they kind of have this link where they're kind of broken in their own way. And together they find a strength to like kind of conquer the world together and be adventurous and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I feel that obviously this time with us playing as Chloe, I mean, Chloe was always the fun sidekick to Max's character in the original game, and now obviously playing her, that sort of angsty front is really sort of front and center, and the fact that we don't have a deeper mystery to solve this time round, I feel is only more detrimental, because we spend more time caught up in this family drama than relationship issues than we do, obviously, having something to investigate. And by the time we do get something to sort of investigate, it just feels, I don't know, if it feels like kind of a letdown, especially when you compare it to the mystery we were following in the first game, which obviously had all these like elements. You had like the serial killer part, you had time travel elements, you had these two characters like having to go into sort of like the darker underbelly of Arcadia Bay, and certainly we get those underbelly elements in this game, as they're obviously having to deal with various sort of like drug dealers and other sort of low lives, and that's right from the Office. We've got the we got Chloe trying to break into the fireworks show, which is being held in this warehouse out in the woods, and it's it's just, I don't know. I think it's just the fact that they haven't been given anything more interesting to do. Then the only sort of real main storylines of the thing is you've got Chloe and Rachel's relationship, and then you've got the whole story behind this mystery woman that we see Rachel's father with. These are sort of the main two plot lines of the game, and it's, I don't know, it's just kind of a letdown that, oh, that's what we're going with here. It's and even though it does in the sort of final chapter try to make it a bit deeper, try to add a bit more suspense with when you've got Chloe going through it and she's like having to try and eliminate all this evidence just so she can get information on where this mystery woman is being held. It just felt like too little too late, really.
You know, I understand where you're coming from, and I kind of agree with what you're saying for the most part, but in another sense, like, Life is Strange Before the Storm was always doomed as, like, I guess it's always been, maybe not doomed, but, like, it was always a fan-made game. Deck 9, like, when they took on the project, they already expressed how they were big fans of the original game, and they really wanted to show that they were fans making games for fans. And in what they're saying that they achieve, I think they do achieve that, because, you know, I walked through this story and I actually felt really, really connected, as in like, oh, I loved how, you know, Chloe found that junkyard that we saw in the main game. And, you know, we got to see Chloe's room the same way, like very similarly decorated as before. You know, there were other things like, you know, Blackwell Academy, we still got a lot of it. We even got to go into the dorms again. And, you know, just these little things really bring you back. And of course, like, you know, they go to the lighthouse and we realize how she found that spot. And so that, you know, carries what, you know, opens the original game. So, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, I feel that as a fan of the franchise, as a fan of the original game, that this game really does deliver, because it shows you the origins of how all these things came into play and the significance of all these places. So in that sense, it really does work. But you make a really good point that, you know, you can't compare this game, because this game is kind of like a very light story. It's easygoing in a certain way. They do have its deeper moments, and our main threat is, like, you know, like you said, the darker underbelly. It's kind of like the underground Arcadia Bay that's going on, and you can't compare it to, say, like you're hunting down some lady, and it feels all like, you know, the story feels very much like it's on rails. Like, the choices I make don't really make that much of a difference in the end. I can see where maybe some of them would make, like, some bigger decisions could have their impact in the future. But it definitely doesn't have that choice-based element that affects, you know, the results that the first game had. Even though that game, we also had the comment that no matter what choices you made, your final decision was, you know, your final ending was going to be one of two choices. There really wasn't, you know, this game has always been set up that way. And, you know, I feel like this game still follows that kind of same trend. Except this one, you know, like, I think that what's important is that this one adds two different things. Like, instead of taking pictures in the first one, this one we have graffiti achievements. So you can go around and hunting for graffitis, which I thought was probably one of the elements I like the best, because it encouraged me to really go like exploring everything in a room, and then sometimes I worry that I explore too much and then someone's gonna bust in, and of course that never happened. And the second thing was that you have backtalk challenges where, because Chloe's kind of like a sharp-mouthed girl, she likes to talk back to people all the time. So she gets to talk her way, either throwing down insults or pressuring them or insulting them or whatever to just get her way to, get into the party, get into the concert or whatever else.
Yeah, it's certainly... There is more. You've obviously got the emphasis with dialogue because, as I said, she's a smart mouth. So the fact she's willing to shout people down, and that's like her special ability. And I like the fact that the more you sort of research or investigate certain environments, you can get certain clues which give you additional dialogue that can really sort of help you out. And yeah, the problem with this game is that, because obviously when we have the official Life is Strange 2 come out, it's going to be a completely new set of characters. So Before the Storm is essentially the last hurrah for Arcadia Bay. And sort of, it serves the same purpose that Twin Peaks Firewalk with me served to the original Twin Peaks, in the fact that it provides this prequel to fill in this last remaining gap in the story, because the only thing that was sort of, where the entry of Life is Strange, the only thing we didn't have filled in was, this history between Chloe and Rachel, and that's because there's no way to really work in this younger story into the existing gameplay. So to that extent, Before the Storm works well, and with the final shot of the game, the post-credit shot, it essentially brings everything full circle. It brings us to where it ends, and I felt that final shot the game didn't actually kind of earn, because we end on a moment where it feels like we could have another story before we got to Life is Strange, and having this sort of final shot of the phone vibrating on the glass table in the photography studio, which would be obviously familiar already to anyone who's played the original game, it just felt like that we're sort of rushing ahead and we're just sort of like tacking it on to the end. It just felt that it hadn't earned that ending. It felt that we were sort of rushing ahead just so we can say, oh look, see, it's all links together now. But
I mean, I like, off air, I talked to Elwood about this before, and I thought that post-credit ending was really good just because it linked everything together. It's really rare that we actually have different opinions about games now. So this is quite, cool to see it, that your perspective of how it didn't earn it.
It just felt...
I do agree that it didn't earn it, but then on the other hand, like, I'm thinking about it is like, did I really want to know more about Rachel and Chloe? Was there something else they could tell? The only possible thing they would do is add another story in between, which would be from Rachel's perspective and how she meets, what was his name? Jefferson, and how they meet and how she goes to her demise. But then you can't build a game around that where your fate is going to be doomed. No one's gonna make that game. So I just can't figure out how they would have done it. But I mean, game developers do things that surprise me all the time. So maybe someone will think up a way to incorporate that and pitch it to Don't Nod or pitch it to Deck 9 or whoever who's dealing with this, or Square Enix, because that's the main publisher. But yeah, I think one last thing I want to talk about is really the fact that, other than... I felt a lot like I was in a fetch quest in this one, though. I don't know if you felt that way, because, you start the game and you're like, oh, I'm hunting for my phone, and then my mom tells me to go fetch her purse and then fetch it down to the dining table with her phone, and then you gotta go fetch the toolbox for David, and then someone else tells you to go to somewhere else, and then you gotta, at a certain point, you meet, the parents, and then they tell you to go set the table, you have to go do this, and then go do that, and then go do this. and I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like the action parts were a little forced. I guess it's just because there's, that's why I found the graffiti parts to be so fun, because it was actually, exploration that I had to do. And sometimes they were in like very interesting places. Like, you know, you look around the junkyard and you got to climb up on a boat, and then in the boat you got to graffiti like 2 things or something and find different little bits, and it was really cool, you know.
Oh yeah, the fetch quests are so stupid in this game, and it's really just pads it out. There is so much padding in this game that could have been cut out, such as the riveting moment where you essentially play a whole game of Dungeons and Dragons.
I actually like that part. I love that part. I thought it was so fun because I'm kind of sad that they didn't have Steph and Mikey in the original game because they were really cool characters, and it would have been nice to see their characters a little bit more fleshed out. But I think it was fun. Like, it was a nice addition. Like, I don't play D&D in general. Like, I don't really know much about it. But I thought it was a really nice addition to see Chloe be her badass self, being like, you know, whatever her character, Calamaster or something, like Calamastia or something.
Yeah, it ties in well. They have throwbacks to it throughout the game, but yeah, when we're having the table setting sequence, that drove me insane. The fact that you have to like put a plate down and then you go back and it's sort of like, oh, witty comment. Oh, now go put the cups down. And you walk over and you put the cups down, and oh, more witty comments in. It's the dialogue's so bad as well between between Chloe and these parent characters. It was just painful to watch and even play through. I mean, at least with the original Life is Strange, we had the one level where we had to go and find batteries or something, so it was a little more restrained than this game was, where it just felt like every chapter must have a fetch quest. Because...
there were multiple in a level. It was a lot of fetching.
Did you?
But I mean, like, okay, we've kind of like criticized this game a whole lot so far. Are there any scenes that you particularly liked, or characters that you particularly enjoyed?
Well, when it came to characters, there's so many characters in this game that I often lost track of who they are, and even worse still, there's characters that they make mention of, but they don't get stored in your journal, so you have no way to flash back and remind yourself. Such as we have the heated confrontation in Rachel's father's office with Chloe's stalker, and I can't remember where this guy came from at this point because he's not
Elliot. Yeah. Elliot has a huge crush. He was the guy who asked her to go to the Tempest play and then, like, always texts her. He always texts her and wants to see what he is. He's also the guy who was sitting in the parking lot when she was there on Saturday. And
I'm glad you were keeping track of it because I thought
it was a really huge turn of event. I never thought, like, he would, like, flip and then be, like, there following her. And then I found that moment pretty shocking. But it kind of came out of nowhere because his character never really got enough place for him to suddenly bust in and be like, oh, suddenly he's going all cray-cray on her, you know?
I mean, favorite moments. I mean, I liked the whole second half of the first chapter where you got Rachel and Chloe and they're skipping out of school and going off to have a little road trip to the woods, and you see the start of their relationship and the sort of light flirtations between them, because Chloe's obviously getting these feelings for Rachel, but she's not sure if it's just her, and you've obviously got all this element of like teenage sexual awakening and stuff, but it's done in such a nice way, and it's framed so well. It brought back to mind some of my like fair moments of like the first game where you had like Max and Chloe and they're like walking along rail tracks, and it was just that sort of light-hearted gameplay, and it's made the game, it's obvious the fact that you're playing something so different than your normal sort of gameplay, and why we play independent games so much, because of experiences like this and what remains of Edith Finch. They're just giving us actual stories to play through that aren't involving things being blown up or eviscerated. So that was fun. I mean, certainly I would say the warehouse showdown at the end of the final chapter, I thought was really exciting. There were so many elements to that, and it had so many surprise moments throughout. I think Chloe really comes into her own as being an absolute badass when she's facing down this psychotic drug dealer character, and certainly the elements that are obviously brought in with this mystery woman at the same time really sort of framed that final choice of the game really well. So that was for myself. What about yourself?
Well, I mean, just going off of what you said right now, definitely the final scene was a really big one. That's definitely one of my favorite ones where, you know, the choices, as I look back at the choices that we were able to have as an outcome, it seemed that the final ending, the last few choices really, whether you were able to save the woman or not, was determinant. You know, it could have had a few different outcomes that would have changed the story in total. Obviously, I only played it through once, so I only have one ending. I don't know what you got, but I mean, my other favorite was, I have to say, one of my favorites was the Tempest play. Like Chloe being forced to go on stage to fill in for a girl that was late. I thought that was really, really clever because, you know, up to this point, we've had to read a lot of journals, and that's normal. Like, Life is Strange had a lot of that, a lot of journals, a lot of text messages, a lot of notes here and there. And this time they gave you a screenplay and of just, you know, they gave you a script of the play of the Tempest, of your part as Ariel. And I've never, when I was in high school, I never had to read the Tempest, and I've never had the urge to read it on my own. It's not my thing. So I knew nothing of the Tempest. And I was looking through this, I was reading through it, and it was like, and you go on stage, and you're like, you could totally, like, just mess up all the lines. And I actually, like, said one of, like, what, as I was thinking about it, I thought it was the right line, and then as she was saying it, I was like, oh, that's not right. That doesn't even make sense, you know? I think I chose, like, hell is full or something like that, and it was really dumb. But yeah, it was really nice because you had to remember, like, sequence of things of what you had to do, and you know, you had like certain, you had the theater director kind of thing, the professor kind of telling you, like, making comments in the back if you did something wrong, or you have your inner monologue going off as well, and it was a fun time, I think. Like, it was really fun, and plus I really liked all the costumes they had there. I thought it was really creative. It was like it was a different pace from the whole story itself, and it kind of really, really strengthened their relationship, because it was at that moment, you know, that we really saw how Rachel felt about them.
Yeah, the play, I probably should have made the mistake of skimming through the stage directions, so in the middle of the performance I had her just sitting on a rock, which got audible groans from the audience, which made me think, oh, perhaps that wasn't the right move. But yeah, it has this, at the end we obviously get this whole sequence where they use the undertones of the play to talk about their own feelings for each other, which was really interesting to see. But I think if it happened in my school, you probably would have they wouldn't have been going, oh, this is revolutionary. They would have, you know, pulled you off for trying to bugger around with old Shakespeare's work. So this is the problem. This game didn't have, whereas with the previous Life is Strange, we had all these sort of like snapshot moments that really sort of stood out in each chapter. In this game, they are so few and far between, and there's just so much filler that it really ends up detracting from the good moments that we get. And it really certainly put me off going back, because I knew that I would have to go through those horrible moments again.
Yeah. Well, the original game had threats. I think that's the main thing, is that no matter what game you play, whether it's a walking simulator or whether it's a choice-based game, you have threats. You need to feel threatened. This game was, you know, the original game, you felt like you were threatened because you were solving to look for a kidnapper who was killing people, you know?
Yeah.
You weren't sure in the beginning whether it was a kidnapper or a killer. Just, you know, you didn't know who was involved, and you didn't know what was going on. But this one was just really, you know, drama. Okay, hey, there's a mystery person. Who is this person, you know? Oh, it's this. That's what the connection is. And then you go, and then the ending has, like, oh, so this person that you saw from the first episode all the way till the third, finally you kind of have an idea of why he's the threat now, you know? And that's really, you know, it makes it feel like it's like, you know, you're walking through a general story and really just learning about Chloe and Rachel. That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. I just felt like the pacing could have been a little bit quicker and cut out some of the things that we had to, like the little things that felt unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, what would you give this this game? What would you give Life is Strange Before the Storm?
Life is Strange Before the Storm. Oh, it's so frustrating because of how much I love the original game to now sort of have played through this one. I think for myself, it's... I'm going to have to say it's a 3 out of 5. I was going to go 2.5, but I think there's those few moments that do sort of shine to it, and there's elements that made it not completely worthless experience. I mean, just like simple things like you said, you're doing graffiti, which is fun, and some of the graffiti is really fun, such as like the box of dicks that you write on the toolbox, or when you turn the vending machine into a woman giving woman's legs, so it looks like she's giving birth to snacks. I thought those were fun little elements, but yeah, it's this. The chapters themselves, they go on too long and they're padded out with too much nonsense and fetch quests to be as effective as the original game was. And like you said, there's just no real threat. There's no underlying mystery to keep you involved in the story. It's just essentially you playing through the relationship of Chloe and Rachel and how those two met. That's it.
Yeah, I was actually at a solid 3 the entire time. So a 3 out of 5 is what I would give it. I'm totally along the same lines as you. The only thing I'd add to what you said is that as a prequel, it needs to be able to stand by itself. And I think as a prequel, for someone who hasn't played Life is Strange, this can still be a game that you can walk into and not really be lost. Obviously, if you play this game first, I'm not sure you'd really want to play the second one because then you might think it's kind of like the same experience, which the original is really not that same experience. But I mean, like, as a stepping stone off, I feel like as a prequel, you could really go into this without knowing anything about the first game, although that ending scene would kind of destroy it all. So I don't know if I'm contradicting now.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I can do that. So yeah, no, 3 out of 5 for me, for all of the above reasons. You know, as a prequel, it works. The story works. It's not as exciting, but it does deliver on all of the, you know, as a fan, I felt like it delivered to be just, you know, showing the things that you love from the first game and where they all came from. And yeah, that's where I'm at. So this wraps up this episode. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Head over to our home base, thatmomentin.com, to read gaming reviews, to get gaming news every single day. You can follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at Game Warp Podcast. Hang out with us on our Twitch channel where we stream at Game Warp Podcast, and you can see all our gaming obsessions over on our Instagram, instagram.com/Game Warp Podcast. Till next time, bye.